Shemai Bab, Croeso, welcome to this introductory briefing that the five directors have asked me to put together to describe the Estyn thematic. The full presentation and the link to the full report, which is linked in front of you and on the presentation itself, is being put as a briefing on every governing body meeting for the spring term 2024 across the region. This is just a quick walkthrough of a presentation I put together. I've currently delivered for Newport Association, Blaenau Gwent Association, and Torfaen Association of School Governors, where it was well received, has been informative for governors, and I hope you will find this useful also. So the full report can be found there on that link. The title of the report by Estyn, done in the spring last year, School Governors Acting as Critical Friends and the Impact of Governor Training, was actually published in May. A short video presentation, which is this presentation, will be linked below once I've finished the recording. So what Estyn did, they focused on the work of governing bodies in schools across Wales. So it is not about the region, it is about Wales as a whole. Written as in a response to a request from the minister, interviewed head teachers and governors, as well as key partners. It was 41 schools in total. We were one of the regional consortia who were interviewed as well as part of it. Also, they sent an online survey to 250 schools and had 363 responses. And as usual with any thematic, they relied upon their Estyn inspection evidence database as well. It's worth to note that regional consortia refer to school improvement services in the actual report itself. So the main findings, which I'll go through briefly in every case, you won't be surprised to find that governors were in the main enthusiastic and committed to their role. However, they noted that whilst many governors are involved in establishing the vision, they don't necessarily fully understand the work that needs to contribute and reflect that vision and the aims of the school. There are strong links for many governors and a strong knowledge of communities, but the majority of governing bodies don't necessarily reflect the diverse makeup of their local communities well enough. And we're working with a number of local authorities to support the recruitment of a more diverse range of governing bodies. In nearly all schools, governors understand that balance, and you'll have heard me talk about this in training a lot, between support and challenge, and that act as critical friends, which is a phrase that I was pleased to see retained after in Newspeak for 25 years or more of the role of the governors. However, that holding leaders to account, particularly as we emerge from COVID for educational performance effectively, is not there in a majority of schools with Estyn's findings. Many schools, governors have a broad understanding. It's worth knowing Estyn's terminology here. Many is about 70% is what they're estimating. The majority is about 60%. Nearly all is very close to 100, obviously. But the language does reflect proportions. In most schools, receive regular information and evidence shared with them. However, on the sixth one, in too many schools, governors do not use their school visits to gather evidence to inform their evaluation of the school well enough. So they rely too heavily on what's given and fed to them by school leaders, not necessarily seeing things for themselves. You'll have heard me say in training as well, that's the joyous part of the role of being a governor as well, going into schools, seeing learners in action, seeing learning happening, and seeing the vibrant nation of the schools. So more planned activity on that basis is what we would strongly recommend. Finance was one that was seen as strong, and there are governors who, on the resources committee or whichever committee you call it, have that range of information and make properly informed financial decisions based on the information received from the local authority. It wasn't seen as an area of concern in any way. In a minority of schools, now this is, looking at about 40% in a minority, governors undertake a regular audit, but so that they have that accurate picture of the range of skills and experience. But in too many schools, that's not done frequently enough. I would say it's for individual governing bodies as well to determine what's appropriate. If you've had a sudden change and influx of governors, yes, you would do a school skills audit. In many schools, suitable support from the local authority or school improvement service. However, the quality and availability varies too much between local authorities. That is definitely being across Wales, in that the consistency between the five local authorities in our area is strong because the governing support service is one and has been since 2012. The majority of schools have internal induction, but the quality varies too widely. We talk about this on chairs training, about having the right person as a mentor for governors, um, so that they have access and pointing onto the training that we deliver. Some regions, and yes, that is, we are included in that region, have a rich variety of training opportunities each term, and many governors and all age schools consider the mandatory training is generally useful. However, the mandatory data training is out of date. I will challenge that slightly and say the mandatory data training that we offer in the region isn't out of date. It's always been kept up to date. But the specification by Welsh Government, which dates back to 2020, is still out of date, but we have moved on from that. So if you're a new governor or a governor who's been a governor for 5 years, still come on that data training. It has changed enormously and will be beneficial for you in your role. Only a minority of governors evaluate the training that they receive and its impact. That's why we ask you to complete an evaluation after every session, which we then send those attendances back to the governing body so you know and have a list of exactly what is happening. But it was seen as a shortcoming in the majority of schools across Wales, but we do have that system for recording that training. In most schools, governors revise the membership of committees every year. Yes, of course, why wouldn't you at that AGM, either taking place late in the summer or early in the autumn, to look at the structure to get the right people on those committees? Also, some of those committees can be challenging for new governors in particular. You know, in exclusions, if you are on that committee, you can hear challenging and perhaps upsetting things. And it's knowing and having an understanding of the role before you go into that. That's why, again, our range of training, supported by the local authority training that is offered as well, does give a feel for those committees. If you're on a committee, it would be appropriate to attend the training relevant to that role. 13th main finding. In most schools, sufficient information about curriculum change. However, assessment arrangements are not fully understood by governors. We've been doing further work with James Kent, and the cluster training that we do for a number of clusters has arranged training on that for governors. There's also James's excellent video presentation on curriculum change and assessment, which is available on our website as well. In most schools, governors have a suitable understanding of the ALN. Education Tribunal Act is linked to that as well. In most schools, governors receive regular safeguarding training, obviously led by our colleagues in the local authority or the arrangements that they broker on schools' behalf. However, in a minority of schools, their level of challenge and understanding of what good safeguarding looks like, what it is in the school, are underdeveloped. It's vital that all governors know what those procedures are, not just the safeguarding governor. Linked to that as well, in most schools, and aware of the policy on healthy and eating and drinking, but there is insufficient understanding that that's a statutory obligation as governors to ensure that the policies and practices are in place to support that. Final one, only a minority of governing bodies have recently undertaken any self-evaluation, hence the deployment from spring last year of the self-evaluation tool, which is now available to all governing bodies as a tool for you to use. There were some comments specific to the region. The schools, the 5 schools linked below, were all selected for case studies. So those case studies were written about the practice of governing bodies in those schools. Those were some of the schools that were contacted. It did make the statement a minority of governing bodies are aware of the audit tools available. That's an audit from across Wales, not just in our area, from the AS, and there's a similar tool in Central South as well, as we developed it collaboratively with colleagues in Central South from the work they'd undertaken as well. There's also on page 38 of the report a specific page-long EAS case study where hopefully you will recognise many of the things said there, particularly about our training programmes and the clerking training that's available to all governing bodies, the clerking, not the clerking training. Those are the case studies. You can see them in the full report. I won't go through the words that are there because hopefully they will be familiar to you, but they did write a case study on the region as a whole. So recommendations for us. There are 4 for governing bodies and schools. That ability to challenge senior leaders about all aspects of the school work. I think the work with your school improvement partner will be vital there as well. The trust you put in that colleague, educational professional, for the knowledge that they share with you. Recommendation 2, and our cluster training really focuses on this, bespoke training for governing bodies focuses on this, but that observation firsthand, what you need to do to get into schools, learning walks, book looks, listening to learners, aligned to the school development plan. Recommendation 3 comes to that regular self-evaluation. The tool that we offer is not compulsory in any way, but it is on offer for you. It's not statutory. You don't have to use that tool. You can have your own arrangements, but if you wish to use that, please feel free to do so. And finally, then, that evaluation of the impact of governor training and their role for governors is key, that you are evaluating what you do in terms of the training that you do and what more you need to do. And is there a link governor associated with training as well, who is looking at that role? And we can provide you with lots of data on the courses that your governors come on through us and local authorities. We have some recommendations as well to evaluate the quality of our governor training more rigorously. We do that in an evaluative report on an annual basis, and that work will be done in the spring term at the end of this programme to inform the 2024-25 programmes for governors. Collaborate with other different parts of the country. Well, obviously we collaborate on a 5 local authority basis, but through ADU, the Association of Directors of Education in Wales Group, we will collaborate with other authorities and seek the right opportunity to do so there as well. And then the final one, that more effective support and advice to help you as governors develop in your role as effective strategic leaders. There are some recommendations set last year for the Welsh Government as well. The guidance on understanding the role of data. We haven't received any new information on that or aware of plans to do it, but we will let governing bodies know when that is updated. Information on the important role of parent governors, particularly those different ethnic minority backgrounds to apply. We haven't seen any work emerge on that yet, but we have taken some steps with colleagues in local authorities to promote those roles, and those materials are now on our website to promote different governors, and there is a case study coming up by the middle of January. That will be on there as well, from governors in Maindy Primary School and their different roles. The final bit is a competency framework. We haven't seen any work on that as such, but if that emerges from Welsh Government, we will let you know so that governors are well aware of that, and we will put in place work to support how governing bodies address anything that is put in that competency framework. So that was it from me. You've got the full short PowerPoint. You've got the full presentation. As ever, where governor support are with the usual email address. You know on our website where all the additional training is. But we thought it would be useful. And as I said at the start, directors asked me to put a very short video briefing together for you to help you through some of the key recommendations from Estyn. The final thing from me to say to everyone is, Joch yn fawr iawn pawb. Thank you very much for being a governor. We appreciate it is a voluntary role. We appreciate all you do, as I'm sure do the schools and learners and the communities ultimately that you represent.